Hi and welcome to another story, and today we have part 8 of Birthday Boy by David Baddiel, continuing from chapter 40, Extremely Dark and Muddy. It wasn't, it turned out, all that easy to row a skateboat using brooms. The brooms had been quite successful as pushers when Schrödinger had been on the road, but now that they were pushing against water there was a problem, which was that the brushes became very wet, which made them very heavy to lift out of the water, which made rowing Schrödinger, which, frankly, was feeling less like a boat and more like a very rudimentary raft, very, very difficult. "Come on, Ruby," said Sam, as he plonked his broom down on his side and drew it back. He was doing his best to sound upbeat and make it look easy, but it was so cold and his arms were very tired. "I'm cold, and my arms are very tired," shouted Ruby, sounding as if she was speaking from inside his head. "I know," Sam shouted back. "Same with me, but we're not far away now." "That's what Mum and Dad say when we're driving somewhere on holiday, and it's not true then either." "No, it is true this time. The island's only about 50 metres away." Which was true, but 50 metres in a car would have truly been not far away. 50 metres in a skateboat rowed with sodden brooms across a river in the middle of the night felt like a million miles. At least it did to a very tired and cold 8-year-old girl and 11-year-old boy. Sam gazed across towards the island. It looked extremely dark and muddy, and full of not very friendly trees. It didn't look, to be honest, like somewhere that was worth taking a lot of effort to get to. It looked more like somewhere worth taking a lot of effort to run away from. It struck him that this whole thing may have been a terrible mistake. It was, for a start, dangerous. He was a kid. His sister, however smart she was an even younger kid, and they may have had brooms and ropes and 4 skateboards presently under the water, but one thing they didn't have, he suddenly noticed for the first time, was life jackets. In desperation, he raised the binoscope to his eyes. This wasn't easy, as he was still rowing with his broom hand, and keeping the device still in front of his face wasn't easy either. It wobbled and trembled, and it was really hard to see anything. "Please," Sam thought, "please, at least make this danger worthwhile. Please, star, shine." Chapter 41, Midnight Feast. "OK, Mr. and Mrs. Green, we have all our units in the local area out looking for your children. The main thing for now is that you stay calm and—" "Oh my God!" This was D.C. Bryant, who had been driving around the Brackett Wood school area for 20 minutes. On seeing no immediate sight of the children, he had turned around and began to head back towards Noam Chomsky House. He was, in fact, just passing Abbey Court, when 3 people in dressing gowns holding plastic bags suddenly stepped out into the middle of the road. DCI Bryant slammed on the brakes. PC Middleton, Charlie and Vicky were all thrown forward in their seatbelts, but the car slid screeching to a halt just in time. Just in time, that is, to avoid hitting Grandpa Mike, Grandma Glenda and Grandma Poppy, who didn't seem to be too bothered about the fact that they had almost been run down. They just stood there looking at the car. DCI Bryant pressed a button. The window came down. "Excuse me, what are you doing?" "Oh, hello, officer," said Poppy. "You're a lovely young man," said Glenda. "Oh no, it's the Rozzers," said Mike. "Stop speaking like that, Michael," said Poppy. "Eh? All the silly stuff you say about the police and being inside, like you're a hardened criminal. The only criminal thing you've ever done is steal a second bun at tea time in Abbey Court." Mike looked a bit sheepish. "Well, the rule is 1 each," he said, "unless you have visitors, of course." "Mum, Dad," said Charlie, getting out of the back of the police car, "why are you up at this time of night?" "Yes," said Vicky, "and you, Mum, what's going on?" "We were going to come up to your flat," said Poppy. "What, it's 11 o'clock at night," said Vicky. "Yes," said Glenda, "but you remember one of Sam's birthday wishes was that all his grandparents should come for a sleepover and have a midnight feast." Yes," said Charlie. "I thought that was maybe just something he said. I mean, we know he's been worried sick about Grandpa Sam, so we thought we'd surprise him for tomorrow's birthday." "Right. Does a midnight feast count as tomorrow?" "I'd say that was today," said Grandpa Mike. "Oh, that's typical of you, isn't it?" said Poppy, "always splitting hairs." "I'd just like to be precise, Poppy," said Mike. "Annoying, I call it." "Don't you call my husband annoying," said Glenda. "I'll call him what I damn well like," said Poppy. Charlie looked at them. "You were really coming round right now to have a midnight feast?" "Yes, look," said Poppy, bending down, with some difficulty, and fishing out stuff from her plastic bags. Vicky, who'd walked over to her, looked at the feast, which included a well-past-its-sell-by-date pack of digestive biscuits, a half-eaten tube of Werther's Originals, 2 apples not much less manky than the one still being eaten, were they only to know it, by Spock on the bank of the river, and a flask of tea, which Poppy carried with her everywhere, and which Sam didn't drink. It was so rubbish, and yet so sweet it made Vicky want to cry all over again. "Yes, listen," she said, not crying, but steeling herself instead. "There's no point in coming over for a midnight feast. for Sam's birthday because Sam's gone missing, and Ruby." The three grandparents for once looked lost for words. "Where?" said Grandpa Mike eventually. "If we knew that, sir," said P.C. Middleton, "they wouldn't be missing." Grandpa Mike looked at P.C. Middleton. "Well, that's not true. You could know where they are, but until you've gone and got them from this note about location, they are, I would say, missing." "Oh," said Grandma Poppy, "you are annoying. You've been annoying. You even being annoying with the lovely policeman now." "Don't you tell my husband he's being annoying," said Glenda. "Look," said Vicky. "Can you please stop arguing?" The three grandparents all looked at Vicky, and then they all looked a bit ashamed. "I don't normally shout at you when you're shouting at each other, but now I am, because our children are missing, and Grandpa Sam is still missing, and you're wasting time shouting at each other." "Sorry," said Grandpa Mike. "Sorry," said Grandma Poppy. "Sorry," said Grandma Glenda. Unfortunately, they all said it at the same time, so they all started glaring at each other, as if to say, "Don't interrupt me when I'm trying to say sorry." But then they noticed that Vicky was still staring at them, so they looked down, ashamed again. "We're all grit-munching nerks, aren't we?" said Grandpa Mike, and they all nodded. Chapter 42. Born to be Wild. "OK, come on you lot," said a voice behind everybody. It was Carmel, coming out of Abbey Court. "Back inside!" Mike, Glenda and Poppy turned around, ready to shuffle back into the sheltered accommodation. They all looked very sad. "Hold on a minute, madam," said P.C. Middleton. "Oh no," said DCI Bryant, convinced that P.C. Middleton was going to say something stupid. He raised his hand to his mouth to mime the zipping motion at him, but it was dark and P.C. Middleton didn't see him. "What is it, officer?" said Carmel. "We are looking for some missing children. The grandchildren, in fact, of these three people here. I was wondering if, rather than sending them back inside, we might be able to ask them to help." "Help," said Carmel. "Yes, in search for missing children. It's always helpful if people who know the children are around, because they can suggest what the children might do, where they might go, based on that knowledge." DCI Bryant stopped doing the zip-it mime. He looked frankly astonished. Yes, that is true. Very good, P.C. Middleton." Carmel frowned. "Well, I see that, but how would it work? They can't come with you in the police car. There's not enough room." P.C. Middleton nodded. "No, but I see you have a number of scooters parked over there." "I beg your pardon?" "Yes, Middleton. What scooters?" P.C. Middleton pointed to a rack of mobility scooters by the side of Abbey Court. DCI Bryant looked back at him, incredulous. "Those scooters?" But before any more could be said, Grandma Poppy, Grandma Glenda and Grandpa Mike had stopped going back into their care home, had in fact turned around eagerly and were running faster than you might think towards the mobility scooters. By the time DCI Bryant had finished staring at P.C. Middleton, all three of them were mounting their chosen scooters, ready to go. Glenda had even started revving hers. Well, it was more a whine than a rev, but she twisted that throttle like a Hell's Angel with arthritis. "Come on," she shouted, "born to be wild!" "In 1932, said Poppy. "Excuse me, I'm not that old." "You know what?" said DCI Bryant, walking up to P.C. Middleton, who was watching all this, beaming happily. "I think I may actually buy you a real zip for your real mouth." Chapter 43. Some Sort of Rhythm. Meanwhile, Sam, I'm worried about Spock." "Yes, I think he's okay. It was quite a big bit of manky apple. He'll stay there nibbling on that for ages." Ruby looked back towards the shore. I can't see him." "Don't worry, Ruby." "And how long are we going to be on here? We've rowed all the way around the island twice." That was true. The island wasn't that big, only a little bigger, really, than the size of a rich person's back garden, but it was completely covered in trees, which were very hard to see past. And so far, despite rowing very close, neither Sam nor Ruby had been able to see any sign of a star, or, for that matter, an easy place to land the skateboat. "And," said Ruby, "I've just realised something." "What?" said Sam. "Stars. I know they look very small up there in the sky, but they aren't, are they?" "What? Small? They're huge, except when they die. Then they shrink down to a very tiny size." Sam frowned. "Well, maybe it's a star that's nearly died," he said. "Maybe that's what's happened, when they become a shooting star. So it's got really small." "Actually, when they die, they do not get very small, like as small as a tennis ball, but very heavy. If a star in that state had landed on that island, it would have fallen through it by now and ended up in Australia." As she talked, Sam stopped rowing. They floated on the river. The sound of the water lapping against the skateboat was the only thing he could hear, apart from his sister's voice. Sam thought that it was good that Ruby knew so much about the science of stars, but that the science of stars was a bit depressing. So he kind of stopped listening. He thought about turning back, about how long it would take to row to the bank, and then, more worryingly, how long it would take to get them and Schrödinger back up the hill to Noam Chomsky House. He raised his broom out of the water and looked at it. The handle had a big split all the way down. He felt a little bit like the broom, wet and broken and useless. But then Ruby said something that wasn't so depressing. I mean, I say that it would have fallen through the earth all the way to Australia. We don't know, I suppose. The thing about stars and gravity and black holes and all that physics stuff is that no one really knows what's going on. It's almost completely weird that people might think might happen when you get near a star, especially one that's turned into a black hole. Some of the stuff that happens then is almost magical. Look, said Sam. What? Said Ruby. A light, said Sam. There. She looked around. The skateboat was facing the middle of the island, drifting towards it, and right in the centre of the island, in what looked like the centre of the trees themselves. Yes, there was a light, a faint, flickering light, only just visible through the leaves and branches. Ruby frowned and peered to try to see better. Sam, I really don't think that's a star. It's so weak. Sam turned to her. He put his hand on her shoulder. Ruby, you just said that people don't really know what happens when a star dies. Maybe that's what's happening now. Maybe we will be the first people to know. Ruby looked back at him. Then she looked at the light. It seemed to flicker in some sort of rhythm, quickly 3 times, then longer 3 times, then quickly 3 times again. Come on then, she said, picking up her sodden broom and sticking it into the water, moving the stationary skateboat forward towards the light, which flickered again, 3 quick times. Let's go and find out. Chapter 44. Moonlight Motorcade. Sometimes the middle of the night is a strange time. In old books, they used to call midnight the witching hour, and they thought that was when the women with long grey hair and black cats' hats would fly around on broomsticks. Just for an hour, mind. But there is another saying. The darkest hour is just before the dawn, and some believe that's the time when the most weird and unusual creatures, fairies and hobgoblins, not entirely sure what these are, goblins with small cookers possibly, and ghosts and demons, come out to wreak their havoc. However, presently, heading down towards the river, some time before these 2 times, there was a sight that might have been stranger than anything anyone had ever seen before, certainly in the Bracket Wood area. A police car was travelling down the road. Now, normally police cars go quite fast, don't they? Especially when they have their blue flashing lights on, which this one did. But this particular police car wasn't going fast. It was going incredibly slowly. If you were walking along the pavement at a fairly normal pace, strolling, perhaps walking the dog, and it's an old dog that limps, you would have had no problem keeping up with the police car. In fact, you'd have got to the end of the road faster than it. The issue may have been the motorcade. This is a word for when an important person like a prime minister or a president is driven through a city. He or she is in a car, normally a big black car, and in front and behind the car there will be police motorbikes. Yeah, but the motorcade presently pootling its way down Geary Road towards the river, they looked very different to a normal motorcade. To be honest, it may not have deserved the description motorcade. After all, there wasn't a president or prime minister involved, but it's a funny idea to think of it that way. At the front, holding up the police car, and making DCI Bryant very much want to honk his horn, despite realising that there was no point, were Grandma Glenda and Grandpa Mike, driving very carefully so as to stay exactly together. They both had their lights on. It wasn't a brilliantly strong light on the mobility scooter, but that wasn't stopping them both from swaying their handlebars right and left as if trying to sweep the road to search for the children. At the back, also holding up the police car, as even if Glenda and Mike had not been in front of it, they would have had to slow down to allow these to keep up, were Grandma Poppy and Carmel, from Abbey Court, who decided to come along to keep an eye on her residents. Well, P.C. Middleton, said DCI Bryant, his hand poised over the horn, still desperate to honk. It seems to be working out very well, this idea. Rule number 1 in the police manual, sir. In a search party, always include as many people as possible who know the person or persons for whom you are searching. No, that's wrong. Rule number 1 is, don't have stupid ideas that mean you have to drive at 2 miles an hour, especially when you're in a search party, and time may be precious. Is it? Oh, hang on, Middleton said, looking in the glove compartment for the police manual. Oh gosh, not really. I'm just trying to make a point, that's all. That point being, whilst it is a good idea to bring along people who know Sam and Ruby, that good idea-ness is somewhat cancelled out by... And it was at this point, as the motorcade, I'm still calling it that, swung slowly, very slowly round the corner into the road along the river that DCI Bryant somewhat, lost his rag. He'd been working with P.C. Middleton for some time now on a number of different cases and had been finding it a little exhausting. He stared at him and shouted, The fact that we're going so slowly, and also because the people in front who are searching for the children can hardly see because they're so... Oh, stop! Stop, sir! Shouted PC Middleton. DCI Bryant looked forward again, where he should have been looking rather than at PC Middleton, and for the second time that night found himself heading in a car straight towards a stock-still, stationary set of grandparents. Chapter 45. Crunch. Part of the problem was that both Grandpa Mike and Grandma Glenda had turned their scooters round to the side in the middle of the road, so there was quite a lot more of them for the police car to hit. Luckily, DCI Bryant, perhaps because he'd already had some practice this night, was able to slam on the brakes just in time. Again, although not without throwing himself and PC Middleton and Vicky and Charlie forward in their seatbelts. What are they doing now? Crunch! Not a big crunch, and not a crunch of the car against either Glenda's and Mike's scooters. It was the crunch of Poppy's and Carmel's scooters, coming round the corner against the back of the police car. They had been going faster than usual because it was downhill towards the river. Oh, great. Just great, said DCI Bryant, opening the door of the car. Charlie, Vicky and PC Middleton got out at the same time. They came round to the back of the car where Carmel was helping Poppy up off the ground. Mum, said Vicky, are you okay? She's fine, said Carmel. I'm fine, said Poppy, but why did you stop so suddenly? It was the other two, I'm afraid, said PC Middleton. The ones in front. They stopped when we got to the river. Poppy's face set into the dark frown. Oh, did they now? She pushed Carmel away and began marching round the police car to where Glenda and Mike were still sitting in the middle of the road on their scooters, side on to the police car. Mum, said Vicky as she strode past her, don't. I don't want any more shouting at each other. But Poppy wasn't listening. She walked up to Glenda, wagging her finger, ready to tell her off. Glenda, however, didn't even look at her. In fact, Glenda had extended her own finger out towards the river. That was why she and Mike had stopped and turned their scooters round. The sweep of their lights were weak, but it had just been strong enough, only just to see something. Something moving close to the road, down on the banks of the river. Look, said Glenda. There. Everyone looked around. That's Sam's guinea pig, isn't it? Chapter 46. Flick, flick, flick. Shine, shine, shine. Flick, flick, flick. When the boat hit the island, it was no easier getting off it than it had been getting on. Sam had steered Schrodinger to what looked like the least muddy area, but there was a bank of rocks and stones that it just banged into again and again with the small tide. Every time he and Ruby stood up to try to jump off the skateboat, the boards would bang again on the bank of the rocks and stones, making it difficult to keep their balance. Also, Schrodinger would then go backwards and end up in the water again, 3 meters away from where they wanted it to go. Eventually, Sam went, "Oh, never mind," and just fell off, deliberately. Sam, screams Ruby, putting her head over the side and looking around for him frantically. It's okay, he said, his head bopping up in the water. I'm already so wet it doesn't make any difference. He swam in front of the skateboat, put out one hand on it and pulled it towards the island. In a minute they were there. Sam held Schrodinger still and Ruby got up carefully and walked off onto the island. Then she turned and held out her hand. From the water, Sam said, "Okay, hold steady," and he reached for her hand. She held on to a branch from a nearby tree and hauled him from the water. He stood there on the bank for a while, dripping, then shook himself in a big shiver, like a dog, and then he sneezed. "Are you okay?" said Ruby. "I'm fine," he said, although he sounded to her ears a little throaty. "Can you see the light?" Ruby looked around behind her. It was not that friendly a sight, just darkness and trees and scrubland. Going into the island suddenly felt like going in the middle of the night into the woods. But despite her fear, she peered deep into the trees and... Yes, there, I think. She pointed beyond the branches of the nearest tree. Sam wiped an arm across his eyes. He followed the direction of her finger. He could see it too. It was fainter and more flickery than ever. Flick, flick, flick. Shine, shine, shine. Flick, flick, flick. It suddenly became clearer than ever to Sam what must be happening. The star was dying. This was its death rattle. They needed to get to it before it finally went out. If they were to reverse the magic. If they didn't, his birthday would carry on being every day, forever, and that felt at this point terrible, because he understood now that it would ruin his family, and indeed him as a person for good. Having a birthday once a year was great. Having it every day, it turned out, was not. "Hold my hand again," he said to his sister. She nodded. Together they dived into the trees, into the darkness of the island. And that is where we will leave part 8 of Birthday Boy by David Baddiel. I'll be back soon with the next part of this fantastic story, and lots more stories and videos coming your way very soon. If you'd like to subscribe or hit a like, that's always appreciated. Thanks for listening, guys. Take care. Bye bye.